Welcome to episode 11 of the Life in Bomb City podcast, brought to you by the Social and Behavioral Sciences Department at Amarillo College. I'm Aaron Favor.
And I'm Dr. Beth Rodriguez.
This podcast is produced in the Panhandle PBS and FM 90 studios on the Washington Street campus. It's available on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, podcast apps, and podcatchers. Our guests this morning are two Amarillo community members and businessmen that are helping bring Amarillo further in terms of economic development, particularly in terms of real estate. As we near the first quarter of the 21st century, we're only 5 years out, people.
It's crazy.
I know, it really is. This century is really moving fast. I mean, I guess it's true. Even though we thought we might live forever when we were younger, we are getting older and we are all mortal at this table, unbelievably. I don't know, Zane, that beard is pretty epic.
Once a year.
It's pretty epic. You might be superhuman. It kind of encourages me to grow my own facial hair out a little more.
Little grayer every year.
So, introductions. Austin Sharp, you were born and raised right here in Amarillo, Texas. After living in Amarillo for 18 years, graduating high school, he attended Baylor University, where he graduated in 2004 with a bachelor's degree in business. From 2004 to 2010, he worked in Dallas for Coca-Cola Enterprises as a corporate recruiter. In 2010, Austin moved back to Amarillo to work for his family's commercial real estate business, Mays Incorporated. He started out in property management and worked his way into asset management, which involves ensuring the properties that are held by the company are running at peak performance. He has become a certified commercial investment member, or as they say in the industry, a CCIM. I looked into what it takes to become a CCIM, and that is not an easy process. Austin, it requires about 120 hours of professional education. In order to qualify, you have to have a certain dollar volume of transactions, along with completing a portfolio project and taking an exam. Austin currently serves on the Center City Tax Increment Reinvestment Zone Board, otherwise known as TIERS, and we spoke about Center City TIERS with former Mayor Harpole in depth in episode 3 of our podcast, if any of our listeners want to go back and do some homework on that. So Austin sits on that board. In 2017, he received his real estate license. He joined Core Real Estate with Mr. Zane Oliver and started helping customers and companies achieve their financial goals through investment in commercial real estate. Together, they believe that commercial real estate is the best investment alternative to help people achieve generational wealth through 4 pillars: cash flow, appreciation, leverage, and tax advantages. We will definitely be getting into that in more detail here in a bit and unpacking what that means for our listeners. Austin married his sweetheart Liz in 2010, and they have 3 wonderful kids that are 3, 4, and 6 years old. Sitting next to Austin, we have Zane Oliver. Zane was born in Dumas and has lived in Houston and Lubbock as well. However, he's been in Amarillo for 24 out of his 37 years. That means that you actually just now identified your age.
I know.
On the podcast. So, but you still consider Amarillo your home when people ask, and I think that's awesome. I've only known you as being from here. So you're also the only person that that we've ever recorded that has included where you went to elementary and middle school.
It's important.
It is.
Education is so important.
But he graduated from Amarillo High School in 2000. From there, he went to Texas Tech and graduated in 2004 with a bachelor's degree in business management. He then graduated in 2005 with a master's degree in business administration with an emphasis on entrepreneurship. He moved back to Amarillo in 2007 and spent 8 years as an investment advisor and financial planner. He's been in real estate full-time for the past 5 years, and he's a licensed real estate agent in Texas. Zane has been interested in real estate since he was young. His family has been involved in real estate for more than 40 years. 5 years ago, Zane and Robert Keys founded Core Real Estate. In the past 5 years, his company has worked in both the residential and commercial real estate markets and completed more than $30 million in transactions ranging from $100,000 to $8 million in price. It's just legitimate prices. These are huge. They've also been involved in residential and commercial construction ranging from $400,000 to $2.5 million in price. And you're building right now, right, in the most stringent and exclusive gated communities in Dallas-Fort Worth. So Zane currently serves on the Amarillo Chamber of Commerce Business Council and served on several other boards and committees in the past. He's been married to his sweetheart, Shauna, for 11 years, but has known her for 21 years.
Actually been together for 21.
That's amazing. Beth is like that. Beth?
My husband and I have been together for 27 years and married 15 of them. So
I mean,
it's weird.
So together y'all have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And you guys attend Trinity Fellowship Church and are super involved and hold a weekly life group. I think that's super cool. And you guys are really actively involved in our community and the development. That's why we wanted to have you guys on today. So welcome, gentlemen.
Yeah, welcome. I did want to let you guys know, though, I graduated from OU, so we kicked all of your booties in football. But
okay. Hey, now.
we'll move on.
Hey, it's basketball season. It's different.
That's true.
We have a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, well, I have a Hall of Famer. I think we have 2. LT, didn't he just get Hall of Fame? I was at TCU too. I forgot to tell you. I graduated. That's where I got my doctorate, was TCU.
Okay.
And I taught LT. So
All right.
Oh, that's cool.
I know it is.
I should have brought you a Topo Chico.
You should have.
Yeah.
What
For
happened?
mentioning that you had a doctorate. So you're joking. Okay. So Austin and I both went to Baylor, and it's basketball season. And so we have to rely on the old basketball chestnut to be able to bring that into the
Tech
conversation.
is doing better than them in basketball, right?
No, not this season.
year.
Last season, they went to the national
Yeah,
championship.
that's what I
so
thought.
Hoorah.
that's-
Yeah, had a good year last year, but
Yeah.
Well, they're both good schools.
Oh, they're
but
great.
they're
All of
not
these schools.
OU.
I think it's so funny that people get so caught up in the conflict of the cultures of their schools and where they went to school. On one hand, it's really important to be caught up in that culture. On the other hand,
It's silly.
It's silly. It's kind of fun though to be part of a group. And I bet
It is fun.
I bet that this psychologist over here could talk in detail about in-groups and out-groups and all kinds of other stuff.
I could, but we're not going to do that today.
And we don't have to do that because that's not what we're here to talk about today.
maybe you can bring on that other OU fan from Amarillo next podcast.
That's funny.
well-
yeah, that's good. That was good.
All right. So to get started here, in the bios, we talked a little bit about generational wealth and what that means. I'd like to kind of unpack that a little bit. You had about 4 different pillars there that you mentioned. And here at Amarillo College, what we deal with is generational poverty, and we're tackling that here in our day-to-day operations. On campus, we have lots of different resources for students that are dealing with generational poverty. That cycle itself is different than the generational wealth cycle, and we'll talk about that just a little bit. It starts out with parents struggling to find or hold a job, and then the family gets homeless or is living in temporary housing. And there's, getting into feelings of hopelessness, fear, loss of dignity, struggling to keep children nourished, and then the children lack therein in the abilities to obtain proper education or skills. And we're trying to break that cycle here at Amarillo College.
Right. So this is what we see with generational poverty, and the difference between generational poverty and generational wealth is just a mindset, right? They don't know any different. It's more of a survival mode in generational poverty. And when we look at generational wealth, it's not survival anymore. It's, okay, now we're planning for the future. And how do you guys feel about that?
Well, I think, we probably all have some unique experience and insight into those things, but I do think that a lot of the people that we work with from a real estate standpoint are investors. And when you talk to those investors about what's important to them, what they're looking for, those kinds of things, that topic comes up a lot. That this isn't just something that they're doing for today. It's something that they're doing for their kids or for their families for the future that put them in a different position than they had to be in or that we had to be in. So while the topics aren't you wouldn't normally associate them with each other, we do see that a lot, and I do agree with you that the mindset is one of survival versus one of growth or perpetuation.
Mm-hmm.
Austin, what is your perspective on that? I mean, is it like is it a mindset, or is it something that we need to address on another level, like a policy level?
how do you break through that cycle? You know, that's a question for people that are probably smarter than us. But the reason that we are so passionate about commercial real estate or just real estate is that you have multiple levers to pull from, especially when you compare it to other investment types. Let's say you've got a job and that job is, you know, putting money into, let's say, a 401k. That's, you know, fantastic, but you've got the ability for cash flow. So when you're investing in something, a commercial property, or maybe it's a residential house that someone's paying you rent, someone's paying that mortgage for you, and then you're getting a return, which is just incredible. That property can appreciate over time, whether it be, you know, improvements that you make to the property, you know, forced value or market appreciation. You don't have to have the full amount of money. So if you want, let's say, $10,000 in stock, I need $10,000. Well, if I want to buy $10,000 in real estate, I may need a few $100s. And these are, you know, just hypotheticals. And then I think Zane pointed out earlier in our conversation, tax advantages that are passed from one generation to another are really a foundation of what we do. And so we believe that, you know, if people can get to that point where they're investing in real estate, it's not just for what they're doing today, but their kids or grandkids can see those benefits. And then you start to see real generational change. And that's cool. That's really cool. So
it is. Wish we could just get everybody go buy something. But yeah. I mean, and we have to, hopefully that's what we're doing, is breaking down some of those barriers so we can move people from generational poverty. And we're hoping it's education that gets them there. And that's kind of why one of the purposes of AC, because truthfully, a lot of our degrees are ASs, which are associate's degrees, and that requires a transfer. And not everybody's transferring, and they can't do anything with that. So we have a lot of trade. And that has been a huge part that we've grown in, because we realize that, yes, they have to have money, but it's not just about the money right now. We need to continue. And we're hoping to educate people on that.
Yeah. There was just recently an article in the New York Times about some of the individuals that are attending community colleges. They are literally sleeping in the parking lots. And I think this is one of the issues that our president identified through personal experience and through observation, was that we have students here in Amarillo that they don't have access to Wi-Fi, for example, so they will hang out as close to their campus as possible. This is so sad, guys. I mean, like, you get to this degree and this level of like wanting to attain something and aspiring to improve your life and working so hard to do so, and you're sleeping in the parking lot of the college itself, you know, like that. When you really break that down and think about it, picture it in your head, that is something that should be not only dignified, not something doesn't have dignity, that has so much dignity in it. That's like the pursuit of happiness, right? I mean, we get back to Jefferson and what it means to have virtue and wanting to change those cycles. And so both of you guys have been involved in real estate for a long, long time. Whether it's been official or not, you know, I know what it's like, because I come from a family of educators, and it was always at the dinner table as the conversations that people were having. If you wanted to be able to participate in the conversation, you had to be talking about something, or about the classroom, or something along those lines. And of course, for years, I had nothing to add to the conversation whatsoever. But so for y'all, the conversation was typically, was it something about real estate?
Yeah, a lot of times. I mean, that was part of family business, and so of course, when, you know, family business doesn't stay at work, it comes home, and it's what you talk about at your meals and everything in between. And so for me, it was really good to continue. That was something that I just believe was put in me a long time ago, but continued to be fueled, and that seed was watered throughout time, and got to be included in conversations that not only, you know, maintained interest, but also educated, you know, starting to learn, you know, what are they talking about? Why are they talking about that? How does this rent work? How does that, you know, just different pieces of the puzzle. And so I think Austin and I, both coming from families with a long time in real estate, it was something that became more of our language and more of our nature. And there's a lot of people that jump in and have to work really hard to understand a lot of this conceptually, where we had just a good fortune, I guess, to that it was built into us in a lot of ways.
There's a lot of stuff that's going on in the community right now there's doing stuff with real estate. And one of the things that you guys had a conversation about was the Civic Center, right? And I was just wondering what was the conversation, and what are y'all thinking on those lines?
Well, from my perspective, it is a tough topic because it is a bond election. There's going to be a property tax increase. And so anytime, even my grandma, whose property taxes are frozen, she's in her 80s, we were talking about it the other day, and I'm not voting for that because it's going to raise my property taxes. I'm like, Grandma, your taxes are frozen. Yeah. Well, we don't need it. This is that conservative mindset. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's anytime you're going to have a raise, asking people to pay more, it's a big deal. So we need to be cognizant of it. The way I'm looking at it, and Zane may have a different perspective, is, this thing is 50 to 60 years old. And from a real estate perspective, we see if you let a property or an asset kind of deteriorate over time, you're on borrowed time. And so functionally, this thing is almost obsolescent. For instance, the Coliseum, currently has a height of 38 feet. Well, the industry standard now is 60 feet. So there's a lot of concerts that they can't even go put, a request for proposals to come to Amarillo because we don't have the right functionality. And so I think what they were saying is that for $100,000 valuation of your house, it's going to be $150 annual in tax that you're going to pay. But really what I'm looking at is what's the opportunity cost if we don't do it? The World Championship Rodeo loves Amarillo. That's about a $6 to $8 million economic impact every year. Well, they said we're probably not going to come back because the arena is not big enough, and they're having to kind of scatter out their programs when they come. And so let's say you lose that over the next 3 or 4 years. Well, that could be the first of a long line of dominoes to fall if we don't do something now. So I think it's probably a good thing. But yeah, it's a hot topic for sure. So
it is. What about you, Zane?
Well, I'm always of the opinion that anything that involves taxes or other people's money and government spending has to be scrutinized really well. It's got to be put together well. It has to be evaluated. As Austin said, we can't go back in time at this point and undo the fact that the Civic Center exists and that the city owns it in the capacity that they do. So we do have a decision to make today as asset managers, as stewards of these things that we have as a city. How do we take care of these properly? How do we grow them? What is the resources coming back from them? And so while I'm not a fan of taxes in general and things like that, when you can look at the inputs and say if we spend X, it appears we can get Y. If that's a right-sided equation, I can generally support it. I do think this one's tough. I think it's a big ask, and there's some unknowns in there, which I think that's where there's going to be a lot of pushback and feedback come in from that. Totally understand that. Totally agree with it. As a concept and as a whole, I do think that this is something necessary for Amarillo from a revenue standpoint. I think those taxes that are generated from the different events, the concerts, anything we have, and it's not just the event itself, it's the restaurants, it's the hotels, it's the shopping, it's the activities, entertainment, it's all the other things that come along with it that make the real economic impact. So yes, the events themselves are usually good, but the economic impact across the city in different areas is what's really important for people to consider.
It's fascinating to get into this topic because it leads into so many other topics with regard to government intervention, so to speak. So when we talk about things like incentivizing incentivizing some type of investment from the private industry, not government owned things, but rather getting our own citizens involved. I love the free market, man. I mean, right? Mm-hmm. This is what we're talking about. So the government sets up an opportunity, and tiers, the tax increment reinvestment zones that we have. We have 2 of them now here in Amarillo, and they're separate from the what is it called? That the federal government has,
the opportunity zones.
The opportunity zones here in Amarillo. It's different from that. We have right here. It's an economic development tool that captures the projected increase in tax revenue that's created by development within a defined area, and reinvest those funds into public improvements and development projects that benefit the zone. Is tiers involved at all in the Civic Center? I think this is a question that people might have.
I don't believe they are. No, there's not going to be a tax incentive for any kind of investment because it's a bond election. So
okay, so we wanted to clear that up with voters before they vote on this. And in addition to that, though, we all want to see an Aerosmith concert here. I mean, they're getting older.
Last chance.
I want to see them before anything happens to any of the band members. I lost that opportunity with Tom Petty. We all did, right? Yeah. So anyway, so the tax investment reinvestment zones also, there's a base value that's attached to them determined by the existing taxable value of real property within the tiers at the time the tiers is created. So the taxing entities, i.e. the city, the council, the county, and the school district, continue to receive the base year value of the property taxes throughout the life of the 30-year zone. The increment, the portion of incremental increase in the real property tax revenue above the base year resulting from increases in taxable value of property, is captured for the purposes of the tiers. And so in terms of government, and this is what's so interesting about this, it's just a debate that we have in this country, in our community, is what level should the government be involved in private enterprise, investment in the community? It seems like in the city of Amarillo, we're having this age-old discussion about and it's among conservatives as well. It's so interesting. It kind of it factionalizes conservatives in a lot of degrees. So at what point do we have an obligation to the future of our community to invest in the future?
Right. And that's exactly what we were talking about earlier. Is like we see something. Why would we not fix what we already have when we can? And if it's not fixable, then let's not fix it. There's no reason to throw a bunch of money in. But I just love what they've been doing with downtown. Like I mean, it was like months. Like 1 month you went down and it was nothing. And then all of a sudden it's like, bam, there's everything. And I just think that also bringing in the Civic Center along those lines of, upping up its game with the ballpark and all the stores. And I mean, everything down there is so neat now. And I need people to keep moving in for sure. Like we see the empty ones and you're like, why is no one there? But I think that just kind of brings in this idea of, the 2 different ideologies. And it's the people who want to, like, I want to take care of my stuff. And then the other people are like, well, I can take care of my stuff, but I also want to give something back to the community so we can better everybody.
It can definitely be a double-edged sword. We're actually working with a property owner downtown right now and have their property listed and represented, and we're under contract for that. And it happens to fall in both these categories. So it's property that's in the opportunity zone from a federal standpoint, and so we've got an outside investor from Fort Worth come in specifically for that purpose, that they're either taking advantage of the tax advantages that are given to them through that opportunity zone, but part of that plan, the opportunity zone, is it's not just you buy something, it's you buy something and improve it. Mm-hmm. And so there will be significant improvement made to this property if this deal goes through. And on the second side of that, it's near enough to the Civic Center that it's important to him to understand what's going to happen with that process, with that piece of the puzzle. If that goes through, his property is now more valuable and he can afford to do more with it. Makes it that much more attractive for the end user, whether that be a tenant or whatever else that comes in there, that they have access to the amenities around them, the food, the activities, the business, whatever it is that they need to do. So a lot of these issues that we talk about, they're not black and white issues. We would like for them to be. I think it would make it easier for a lot of people if they were. But there's a lot of aspects to consider of these deals.
The unfortunate thing is, if you don't participate in these incentives today, you're almost at a loss because everybody else is. Almost every city across the country, has a tiers. If they're going to do a big capital improvement like the Civic Center, it's going to involve a bond election. And so it's like, do you not do it? And does the Civic Center sit there another 50 years and become really just, kind of a wasteland? Or do you try to do something and participate and bring some comrades? So, it's unfortunate to a degree because I love the free market, and in a perfect world would love to see no incentives. But it's not the world we live in. So what do we do as a city? It's a tough question. It's a tough debate. The good thing, the projections they're making for the Civic Center is that it would add an additional, $30 to $40 million a year in revenue, and that's based on a lot of the people that they have, gone to say, hey, would you come here if we had X, Y, Z, and have expressed sincere interest, in bringing concerts and events to Amarillo. They're projecting 171,000 more people from outside of Amarillo coming here, 33,000 more hotel stays. And so, that would have a direct benefit, direct economic impact to our community. Overall, we think it's going to be a positive thing.
It seems that the tiers that we're kind of talking about in a lot of these big cities across the country, the encouragement and community development and getting what used to be the infrastructure really of the city, the actual board's name, or the center city tiers. If it is indeed the center of the city, and I remember asking former Mayor Harpole about this because I remember the debate back then was all about the question of, is this something that is viable for the future of Amarillo? We have unbelievable population growth going on in Amarillo, and a lot of it is taking place in southwest Amarillo and different parts of Amarillo. Why are we investing in downtown Amarillo? Well, downtown Amarillo has historically been the center of our region, and he discussed in great detail in episode 3 that people come here as a market from all over. I mean, not just Texas. People come in here from Oklahoma. They come in, and the next available market is like Albuquerque and Oklahoma City, and south of us, Lubbock, and that's it. So if we can somehow broaden the base of bringing people in, capturing them with good hotel stays, and in addition to that, having a good time on Polk Street and doing some other things, then it only goes to benefit and prop up the surrounding communities and the businesses that are in those communities. And that seems to be the long-term strategy, the master strategy, so to speak, of the idea of a tax increment reinvestment zone. Is that, would y'all say that's an accurate portrayal?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think the mindset is a rising tide lifts all boats. I think the traffic counts on I-40 are 60 to 80,000 cars per day. And then you've got 25,000 people working downtown every day. Well, those people, they're coming through. And so if we have a vibrant downtown, which is, you look at most cities, if you pull up a picture on Google, what's the first thing you see? The downtown. So if this is strong, it really is going to have a spillover effect for our entire community. People may come, they may like Amarillo, they may stay, they may not live downtown, but they're going to stake roots in Amarillo, and that's going to have a direct economic impact. So,
okay, I have a kind of a crazy question for y'all. Okay, so because Aaron had mentioned that Amarillo is growing in the population, if you were able to buy any land anywhere right now, where would it be? Because you know it's growing there.
Well, one of the unique situations about Amarillo is that, people from outside Amarillo come in and they say, well, you've got nothing but land, nothing but dirt out here. Well, the unique situation of Amarillo is that most of that dirt is owned by less than a handful of people. And so there's a unique market dynamic in that generally that's not available unless you're really willing to pay a pretty premium price for it. And so Amarillo presents several unique opportunities and conditions that I think some other cities don't have, and that's one of them. And that does affect development and growth in a lot of different factors, especially in direction. Something else that we see that affects how we can attract people to Amarillo, whether it's a civic center situation, a downtown situation, a Southwest Amarillo situation, any of them. People from outside the area typically are used to more large metropolitan areas, a DFW, for example, where they look at MSA, your metropolitan statistical area, that they're looking for population counts. Well, we don't have quite that next level yet where we can start attracting some of these other, whether it be hotels, restaurants, retailers of different kinds. That doesn't necessarily exist in our true MSA, what they're used to saying is an MSA, but what our argument and our fight has been for a long time, and we're not alone in this. Anybody in Amarillo, anybody in the real estate space will talk to you about this factor that, once you hit 250,000 people, a lot more opportunities start coming up. Well, we're getting pretty close to that. But what they don't understand is the people that do come from, 3 or 4 different states away that are all within even a 1-hour drive time, that come from small towns, small populations, don't have access to health care or a lot of the other things that we offer. And so we argue that our true MSA is closer to 400,000 and 500,000 people in most situations. But that's a hurdle that we face today is trying to convince people of how many people come into Amarillo for commerce.
Yeah, we'll go to Zane and I go to retail conventions, across the state, and we'll have our brochures for our properties, and they'll say, well, we need the MSA to be 250, and that's why Lubbock, they're pretty close. And they get a lot of things that we're not getting at the moment. When you say, okay, let's back up, guys. Look, we have people from New Mexico, from the Panhandle, from Oklahoma that come here for our, great medical, commerce. We've got I-40, and then it's like, oh, okay, let's take a deeper dive and look at Amarillo and look at this site and see if it makes sense. But we have to sell it a little harder. But I think it seems like the AEDC, the new president, and some leaders at the city have caught on to some of these things, and the light bulb has gone on, and they're like, okay, we can leverage some of this stuff and take advantage of it. And I think our best days as a community are definitely in front of us from an economic standpoint.
Speaking of best days in front of us, speaking of population growth, capturing more and more individuals in the community, the Texas Tech Vet School, the veterinary school that we just now, in the last year, has become a reality. Can we talk a little bit about that in terms of economics, what the value that brings to the community that just doesn't have to do with money, but also for the community as a whole, what that means, the synergies between having a pharmacy school, having a vet school right there. I mean, you've got all the kinds of synergies that are there that make Amarillo very unique in the national and international economic landscape.
Yeah, I mean, from the initial economic impact, we're talking, $90 to $100 million in construction alone, to get the facility up and going. And so that's a nice impact around here. It's a local general contractor that's going to handle the majority of that work. That always increases hiring, wages, trades, all that stuff are going to be here, just involved with that project alone. And so Past that, we're talking 300 plus jobs that school is going to bring in, and almost all of those are going to be very well paying jobs. That's going to be kind of the secondary economic impact, and they're calculating. I can't remember the exact number, somewhere north of 100 million, 120 million a year between payroll and taxes, everything else that will recurringly generate. So I think that initial impact alone is something significant, something that Amarillo needs a lot more of, we believe, is that job creation. And this is a really good step for us. Creating 300 jobs right now is going to be a significant impact.
Yeah, I don't think the impact can be understated here, because it's huge for our economy, not just on the $100 million annual economic impact. But now you have a vet school, a health sciences school, and the pharmacy, and the farm school, right next to each other. I think we're the only city in America that has that combination. And so, what we're hoping is this is just the beginning. The AEDC can go out and really pitch to, like, Merck's probably a bad example because it's big, but smaller pharmaceutical research companies who can come in and take advantage of this synergy. And so, maybe they can go out and land, 5 or 6, $30 to $40 million companies to call Amarillo home. So really, this is just the beginning of what we see is just an enormous economic win. Probably the biggest thing we've had as a community since, would you say, Bell Helicopter,
Bell
Zane?
Helicopter.
So, and that's, we're breaking ground. They've broken ground. So this is here, this is now, and it really is exciting.
Well, and we've already worked with clients that as this deal was coming to fruition, that have already made steps to grow with this. Veterinary clinics expanding, getting ready for new things. The research side of this is there's a lot of potential there. With the state-run schools there's a lot of grants and funding that come along with research. Your student doctors and everybody else that's actually at the school, attending the school. So you've got some, from an outside private sector standpoint, you've got some quote unquote free labor and free research that you get to piggyback with and support. And so that's where we think there's a lot of opportunity as a second step of what does the vet school bring. It's going to bring in students, it's going to bring in jobs, faculty, and so forth. But the other things around it, secondary to that, there's a lot of opportunity for it. We're going to have to go out and work for it. We're going to have to go out and get them. But we do have a really unique value proposition in having something that you can test on animals, something that you can test on humans, something that you can develop the drug what am I trying to say here? Along with these research facilities. So really unique opportunity. We're excited about that. This whole thing has been, I think, a really good positive thing for our community, and is just going to continue to multiply itself. So, we talked about economic stimulus, and our AEDC pledged a pretty significant amount of money so that this building, this facility could be built. It looks like at the end of the day that it turns out that most of that money was covered by private donors from the private sector anyway. But I was really glad that we had the ability to step up and say, one way or another, we'll make sure this gets built so that they could take it further in the state and make sure that they could get accredited and approved to the state, all those good things. So that's one of the cases where I can argue for a tax incentive, or however you want to look at it, that being positive for our environment.
Certainly.
I don't think a lot of people know how big a deal it was that we landed that. I think they heard it, they saw a little blip on the news, and then it was like, okay, moving on. I don't think they realized how big of a deal, it is a big deal that this is coming.
Yeah, and a lot of private citizens, investors, like Zane mentioned. I mean, Jerry Hodge with Maxor Pharmacy wrote a check for $10 million for the structure. So private citizens paid for the construction costs of the building, and then they were able to take that amount of money, go to the state, and get their annual economic funding, which is, $3 or $4 million. So really this development, which is going to pay dividends for our city for generations, was stemmed on the back of people who really love this community. So, it's pretty cool to see, we realized what the need was and they came together. I don't think many people know what a Herculean effort it was. And I think the other thing that's going to benefit just our state and specifically to us being the beef capital of the world, now we have that many more, qualified veterinarians that will go out and service, large animals. So it's going to also give relief for, ranchers who, we don't have enough veterinarians. And we had a large population of students leaving the state to go to vet school because there's only one vet school in the country or in Texas A&M. So now we've got a second option. So really just it's a win for our city. It's a win for our state. Really cool.
We should tip our collective hat to the visionaries that have wanted to see that happen for years. And this is something that I think about a lot is the power of an idea. I mean, somebody somewhere at one point or another just said, that's an interesting idea. What if this could happen? Right. And I bet that I would venture to guess that not only everybody at this table has that understanding at some point or another. We've gone, most likely the biggest ideas that we come up with happen to be who we're going to marry. And we kind of go, wouldn't it be interesting if I were to ask this individual to marry me or whatever the case may be? And then years later, you kind of understand the investments. Y'all both, Beth
Yes.
and Zane are talking about being invested in the same person for, decades. And that idea, though, also ventures out into the community. And collectively, I want us to be able to tip our hats to the people that saw this so far down the line and saw it as a big win, what it would be like, because there are so many detractors that want to kill ideas because they don't think that it's possible. They see the hurdles. They don't look at the long-term big win for the community. They're looking at all the different hurdles that you have to overcome in order to get there. I learned from a really good friend of mine early on in my career, thank God, that when you have a big idea, don't look at the hurdles first. Look at all of the benefits and the advantages, and then later on go back and start taking them one at a time, break them down. And it sounds like this is exactly what we did in Amarillo with these individuals who contributed, and then now we've got a collective benefit for the whole community. It's saying a lot.
Okay, another question. Okay, so forever we've said, I remember when it seemed like Canyon was so far away. And now it seems like it's pretty much connected. Do we see that happening where Canyon and Amarillo are really just suburb? Like Canyon's now a suburb of Amarillo, or, that kind of thing like we see in Dallas, how Frisco, it's really just all Dallas, that kind of thing.
Yes and no. I think it's already happened in a lot of respects that Canyon Independent School District comes well inside the city limits of Amarillo at this time. And again, we're talking about big vision and foresight and maybe even lack of foresight in a lot of situations that years and years ago, off the cuff, I believe it was in the 50s or the 60s that Amarillo Independent School District sold off some of the territory, gave up the right, not knowing or not thinking how and where and when that the city would grow. And so that's part of the reason that Canyon Independent School District actually exists inside of Amarillo city limits, even though the city of Canyon is 15 miles away. So to that respect, it already has happened, and I think yes, that is still a growing population of Amarillo is in that buffer zone. What used to be a gap and is now just kind of a buffer zone, and a lot of the residential development is happening within that. Actually, there's very little land left, developable land left in Amarillo Independent School District. So for the foreseeable future, all we're going to continue to have is a growth in Canyon Independent School District and even Bushland now. We're talking, you go west of town, that's now growing into the east, and we're growing to the west, that we're blurring those lines that used to be a lot a lot more distinction and a lot bigger space between. So will we ever grow, or in the near future in our lifetime, will we actually grow together as a city? Possibly. I think that's still, when you look at the past 20 to 30 years, it's taken that amount of time for us to really, to get where we are today from geographically. So I think we've still got a long time before we would ever look at a situation where we were truly a suburb or have to make any different arrangements from a governmental standpoint, anything like that.
Right. I was in a conversation. I have no earthly idea how I end up in conversations sometimes with some of these people.
You just show up.
Show up. About 10 years ago, Karl Rove, the Republican strategist, was here in Amarillo speaking at WT. And somehow I found myself in this private conversation. I have no idea how it happened. But he was talking, and this is somebody that's going to have an understanding on the national level about economic strategies for regions, for cities, for et cetera. And he indicated how smart of a strategy it was for Canyon and Amarillo to blend their economies collectively and see the benefits of kind of playing off of each other in different ways. And he saw that as a long-term strategy in the region, and he kind of tipped his hat to his to the individuals that were thinking about that are charged to think about those things. Elected officials, people that are on committees, such as you guys, and thinking about the long-term things that are not something that the day-to-day person might consider when they're just. And that kind of gets us into a larger conversation about our Amarillo students, Amarillo College students who are living. Oftentimes, we find day to day, and so I don't know. I want to put that. Beth was about to say something.
I was just gonna, again, ask a question. If there was anything, since you both are on committees and different things with real estate, is there any huge thing that you were like, God, I wish they wouldn't have done that? Like bought land, sold land, or done something that you're like, that is such a, not a good idea.
You're putting us on the spot now.
Yes, I am.
Well, I think you can, from a city standpoint, from a governmental standpoint, I think there can always be arguments back and forth. I think several things that had good intentions probably didn't pan out, and I think some other things that probably could have panned out didn't make it. So, yeah, that's a tough argument. Yeah. Again, I'm always going to default a little bit to the I want the city and the government to be as involved as little as possible. Mm-hmm. Just a little bit of my personal political theology there that I want to see the private sector do as much as they can. And we go back to that comment of a lot of the land is owned by a few people. Those few people have done a lot for the community. Mm-hmm. While they own an asset and they have a responsibility, we can make that circular discussion argument there of stewarding your assets and growing things and so forth. Those are some of the families and some of the folks that have spearheaded a lot of initiative and have donated land for things. Yeah, even in the Texas Tech vet school situation, there's been land donated for the large animals where they'll actually keep and work on and practice with large animals and things like that. So it's not always that one-sided discussion. And you do find a lot more often that in that wealth mindset, if you want to call it that, that you then become more mindful of the people around you, the situations around you. And in most situations, I'd say it's a lot more of not only how can we take care of ourselves, but how can we leave a legacy,
right?
And that legacy is much more than who owns this property or what bank account goes where. It's did we make an impact in the community around us? And it's even in our mission statement. It's one of the things that we believe in. Improving the quality of life around us and the economy around us, and what that means to us from an economy standpoint. A big portion of that is job creation. Mm-hmm. The more people, the more retailers, the more whoever we can attract to Amarillo, the more opportunities that we can create here, the more jobs that will be created. and that feeds into what you guys are talking about and what you guys are living too, is that those jobs are a lot of times good jobs. Those are things that whether you have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, it doesn't matter. Some of them are just purely trade, but they're quality jobs that give people a better quality of life.
Exactly. And that's what we do. We really want to educate people and keep them here. Like we want our very educated, intelligent, prepared students to have a place to actually stay and work. And I think that's part of you guys, what your mission statement says. And that's really neat that y'all have that.
Well, the second piece of that we talk about, attracting people with MSA, how many people can come and shop at my store, whatever. The second piece is you're talking to an employer. They say, how many people can come work for me? How many skilled, educated, qualified employees do we have available? And that's one thing that I think Amarillo is behind on. We have a very low unemployment rate, and while that might look good on paper as a statistic, it also means that there's not available qualified, good employees for a lot of employers to come into Amarillo and have a pool, have somebody that they can come to and hire. So while we're also trying to attract new business in, we've got to attract employees in too. Sure. And so from a city standpoint, that takes in where the city is well-meaning in trying to create some of these experiential things, downtown, ballparks, civic center, all that. There's a quality of life aspect that leads to those other factors. That how do we attract people if our town isn't fun, attractive, with a lot of things. So that's the other side of that argument. Sure. Is it all done perfectly, and should taxpayers pay for every penny? That's the back and forth argument. But a lot of those ideas are founded in those thoughts and in those gaps of what are we lacking? Well, we're lacking qualified workforce. Why are we lacking it? Well, is Amarillo a fun place to be? It's getting better. And people from Amarillo generally love Amarillo. And I think that's how we all are at this table, probably, that we grew up here, we've been here a long time, and we love it. We love the quality of life here, the easiness of a lot of things and so forth. But do we have the attractions and the amenities of larger cities? We're doing more, but there's a lot lacking. And when we have to compete with other cities, whether it's Lubbock, whether it's DFW, whatever those cities are, those are the things that we're competing on. What kind of quality of life is there? That has to do with wages, has to do with education, has to do with fun and amenities and all these things. And so very few of these things are a one-sided, one-point topic.
Sure. That makes total sense.
I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, we had an opportunity to pass the ARC, which was the activities and recreational component. Soccer fields, new volleyball courts. I think there was a Olympic-sized swimming pool, and I think we missed out on that to a degree. It was a bond election, so we needed to put thought and consideration into it. But in talking with some of my friends who have kids in traveling sports, they're spending $5 to $10 grand plus a year going to Lubbock or Dallas. And part of the reason that some of these tournaments don't come here is because our facilities, and I grew up playing soccer here, it's terrible. Southwest Park, you've got clogs of dirt. I can't tell you how many sprained ankles I had. And maybe it's gotten better. I haven't been out there you're shaking your head. It hasn't. And so, I think that would have been a direct quality of life enhancement that was going to bring people into Amarillo. They're going to stay for the weekend. They're going to spend money. And so I think part of the reason maybe the city didn't really feel like they needed to educate the public as much. They just thought, we've done polling. This is needed. Of course it's going to pass. And it didn't. So the positive is I think that they have figured out we really need to do a better job of educating the public on the benefits of some of these things, not just, your property taxes are going to raise and why does that benefit me? But I think we missed out on that.
I would agree with you on that.
Okay. You have kids?
I do. I have 2 boys playing baseball.
Okay.
And so, I mean, the baseball fields, they're not anything where we go to other, like Lubbock. They have like fabulous fields all over the place. In Oklahoma City, God, they have so many fields. And so I think we are missing out on a lot of that.
What it kind of goes to, what is the opportunity cost of not doing something? You know, we always talk about what the cost is of doing something, and we forget to ask the other question, which is, well, what are we going to do if we don't do it? I mean, what's the cost of not doing anything? Well, we don't know what that is. We can only use our imagination, and I find that other cities are going to take advantage of it as is part of the opportunity cost of not doing anything. And so that's seems like a good way to respond to that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's always going to be two sides of that coin, and you have to evaluate both sides and make the best decision you can at that point. What we hope and that over time that we can encourage more private investment in that as well. I mean, when we look at the economic factors that drive any, what you're talking about, a sports facility or anything like that, if we can recognize that opportunity and then we can put the financial metrics and all the other things with it, that's something that we spend a lot of time thinking about. Like, what don't we have that we need, or that we can try to promote, whether we have the capacity to do that or not. How can we talk to others about those situations and increase those opportunities?
Mm-hmm. Well, and you look at the tiers, opportunity cost. So property values from 1985 to 2002 in the downtown area declined about 21%, while across Amarillo they increased 168%. Since the tiers was created in 2006, there's been almost $100 million in property tax, value increased in that urban core. Now, did they do an incentive to get it there? Yeah, they did. But if they hadn't have done that, and we go another 10 or 15 years and those property values continued, let's say it's another 25%. So now you're 40%, while the rest of Amarillo is growing, and you have this downtown that's kind of crumbling. So, okay, what was the opportunity cost of not, if you didn't do that? That's it. And so, has it been perfect, like Zane has pointed out? There's probably some things that we could do better. Has it been as successful as they wanted it to be? It's probably mixed on some areas. Like they wanted, I think like 1,500 multifamily housing units by now, or we might be at 300 or 400. Mm-hmm. And there's some reasons behind that, but at least they got 300 or 400, and there's, some plans in the works. The First Bank Southwest Tower is now adding units, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's a direct, like, you can see this declining valuation and like, okay, if we don't do something today, this problem is not going to get better. Mm-hmm. So
thank you guys so much for being with us today. And thank you for all the work that you do. Good grief.
You guys are helping out the community. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, which helps our college.
Yeah.
And hopefully we're training students and teaching students that are going to be working alongside you guys and in the future become visionaries themselves and contribute to our collective economy and collective good. So anyway,
thanks for having us on, guys.
Yeah.
We appreciate what you guys do and the value you guys bring to the community.
Thank you.
Big time.
Thanks.
Okay, listeners, we have 16 more episodes to do this spring lined up for you, covering everything from the impeachment trial, which is over, but we're still going to go back and look at it in retrospect, to mental health, to national and international security. We're going to be with two of our history professors to visit about Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald. We also have guests lined up from across the country, from the fields of political psychology and international relations to questions regarding sex education. Some upcoming episodes include our very own Dr. Alan Key, retired professor Dr. James Calvey from WTAMU, and Dr. Wade Schaefer, also of WTAMU. Thank you again to both of our gentlemen guests this morning, and thank you for listening. We'll be back soon with another episode.
Have a good one.